Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sensitive Podcast. I am your host, Kimball, a somatic leadership coach for highly sensitive women leaders, entrepreneurs, and coaches. And today I am joined by a very dear friend of mine, Michelle Crouse, who I am so excited to introduce to you and give a little bit of a backstory about. But I'm going to allow her to introduce herself first, and then I'll go into that. So I would love for you to just introduce yourself, Michelle, to start.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle. I have a background as a doctor of physical therapy, and I no longer practice clinically, and I've transitioned into holistic health coaching, focusing on the foundations in the body, making yourself feel safe. And one of the main modalities I use is the human design system, which is what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah. All right. So I like to just give a little bit of a background of where I know people. And yours is a particularly fun one to go into that I would love to share with people. And how many years have we been friends now, Michelle? Is it like 4? Is it 3 or 4? Something like that.
So I reached out 4 years ago, but we didn't connect until 3 years ago.
That's the fun part that I want to share is that how Michelle and I got connected is that she sent me a message on LinkedIn, which I never use LinkedIn. And so the message stayed in my inbox for a year plus. Maybe it was a year and some change. And I get so many spam messages in LinkedIn. I just go through it, and, every once a year or something and delete them. And I found her message, and she said, oh, like, I'm also a doctor of physical therapy, and I also have transitioned out of practicing clinically, and I'm also a coach now, and I also live in the Richmond area. And I would love to get together sometime if you would like that. And so obviously I saw that this person wasn't spam, and we had all these sorts of different connections. And I was like, oh yeah, that would be great. I would love to get together. So we got together for coffee. And I think since then we have met up almost on a weekly basis, barring, lifing. But Michelle has been someone that has been such a dear friend to me and has been with me throughout my entire pregnancy, is very close with my son. We call her Aunt Michelle to my son. My son knows exactly who she is and is one of the very few people that is not my husband or myself that he will allow to pick up and give hugs. So she's just a very trusted person in our family, and I get the wonderful benefit of being able to talk all things human design with Michelle because she loves to talk about it and I love to hear about it. And it's such a complex system, as I know we're going to get into, and such an incredibly useful system. And I think can be an incredibly useful system for highly sensitive, neurodivergent people in particular. So I wanted to have her on today to start unpacking this a little bit, because you will see this in the interview process today, obviously, but I've had human design readings done by other people. I have listened to a lot of different people talk about human design, and Michelle is far and away the most knowledgeable person that I have come into contact with. So I feel like this will be a real treat. And Michelle and I have already talked about how this is such a dense system that we're really going to be skimming the surface today, and maybe we'll have a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4. Or you can get your own reading done with Michelle and dive into the portions that is going to feel the most useful to you. But so I know, as I said, that some people listening may be very familiar with human design, and some people may not even know what it is in its entirety. And so just to start out the podcast on sort of an even playing field, would you mind briefly explaining what human design even is? And why you feel like it's potentially a really useful tool in business, especially as a highly sensitive person.
Absolutely. So human design is the synthesis of the Chinese I Ching, the Kabbalah tree of life, the chakra system, Western astrology, and quantum physics. And this was channeled, downloaded, and synthesized in 1987. So I feel it's really important for our generations because we weren't raised with this system. We were raised under a very highly conditioned, narrow box system. And I think so many of us feel like we don't fit in. And I love when you see this chart because it comes alive to show you your strengths and some areas that you may struggle in. But for me, it really gives a roadmap, like an energetic roadmap of how you're best able to utilize your energy and how it feels authentic for you. And especially for those of us who kind of lost self-trust along the way, the reminder that no, you're beautiful the way you are, and there's nothing wrong with you. And we can figure out the way that just feels more aligned and more natural to you. So for anyone who may go and pull a chart for the first time, you're going to see this very complex looking diagram. And the center, it has 9 centers with 64 lines that come off of it. And then on each side, you're going to see all of the astrological symbols. On the right side, they are colored in black because that's considered your conscious or your mind design. And on the left side, it is red, and it is your unconscious or your body design. Both of those get mapped into the middle, and that's where you start to see the colors that come into play on each chart. The red and black, the lines, correspond to those sides. The centers, as they get colored in, there's no specificity to the colors, why the color is the color. The only difference you want to look at is it a color or is it a white center? Because that makes a really big difference in each of those. And so today we're going to talk about the 2 centers that are at the top and the bottom of the chart. As the intro into where I see people who identify as neurodivergent and highly sensitive could feel more pressure in the system. So the top triangle is called the crown, and it's a center for inspiration. It's an awareness center. But we live in a world that we are so highly conditioned to mentally process. We think that we should think through everything, and we've become very disconnected from using our body and trusting our body. And that's honestly where I think the beauty of the system comes in, because it helps you bring awareness and it helps you learn to drop back into your body, to utilize tools like, Kim coaches through with somatic coaching, to teach you to feel safe in the body and then understand why that feels natural for you. So when we look at the crown center in human design, 70% of the population has what's considered an undefined or open crown, which means that triangle is going to be white. And that means that we are amplifying energy from everybody else when we're in aura with them. And in aura with somebody else is considered 6 feet, or it's even the way that we're connecting over distance over the internet right now. So when you're in aura with other people, you can get this inspiration for all these ideas, and you can have a lot of difficulty recognizing which ones are yours or which ones are somebody else's. And it can create a lot of anxiety because you get this pressure to feel like, oh my gosh, I should process everything. And then if you happen to be in aura with somebody else who has a defined center, you absorb their definition. And so they may have a lot going on mentally that they're processing, and you can feel that pressure as well. And it's very challenging because we think that we should do everything that we come into contact with, and we're not. There's billions of ideas on this planet, and we're not meant to act on every one of them. But it can be really, really challenging for people. And just even the concept of organization comes in because it can feel very scattered and static and things like that. When you look at the human design crown, this is an easy one to kind of talk through really quickly because there's only 3 gates in the crown. And so if you have any line that's hanging off that crown center that's either red or that's black, that means that you have that defined gate. So you're amplifying the energy of the whole center, but then you're getting a blend of that one particular gate definition. And you have questions that come in the head. So gate 64, it asks how. Gate 61 asks why. And gate 63 asks what. So depending on if you have some people have all of those gates defined, you might find that you are asking how, why, what, a lot, and like really kind of perseverating on that. So if you do have an undefined crown with a gate defined, what you can do is you can go and I'll provide resources that we can link in the end of the episode for some really good gate definitions. So you could go and you could look more specifically at what the flavor of the gate fully is. Because the other concept within human design is you have what's considered self and non-self energy, or high and low expressions. So, it's the duality of life. The system really brings to life the duality of life. There are times where you'll be stuck in the low energy and you have to work over time to get yourself to more naturally become the high energy. But the system is nothing that you ever perfect. That's kind of a misnomer that I felt was out there when I was first learning it. You are beautiful in your design. You are the expert in your design. And it's just an awareness system, because life's going to throw challenges at you, and you're not always going to be at the high level, high expression of your entire design. Sometimes it's the teaching moments are the ones where you're like, wow, that I really acted that way. Okay, I can see how that energy came through. I can see how that experience, caused me to initially act that way. And now I know how to act differently the next time I engage with this. So I think the undefined or open crown for the neurodivergent group is really important to know. I would love to see research being done on this, because I really think human design falls in the lines of epigenetics. I think it could potentially show us some of the way that we are genetically set up to behave. And then, of course, we all have our own environment and experiences that over time develop us. So I think it'd be really neat to see with children how their brains are developing over time and what has happened, and what that's showing, so we could get some real science behind this system. They call it the science of differentiation, but there's not a lot of hard science to back up some of these claims that are out there right now. So the undefined crown or open crown is the first one, and it's an awareness center. So when you're looking at those 9 centers, there are 4 centers in the chart that are considered motors. So they can mobilize energy. The crown can't. So all this thinking that we've been conditioned to do, we can't do anything with it. This thinking is actually trying to pull down into the throat region, what would be the throat chakra region, to be expressed that way. But I feel like a lot of us are just stuck in a big circle up in the top of our head. And so having awareness of that and what your design's doing. And then for relationships or for businesses, it's really good to know who you're interacting with. Obviously I'm very biased towards this system. I think it'd be lovely if everybody knew what their design was, even if they didn't understand it fully, right? Even if you could just kind of look at it, because it really does help you when you're interacting with somebody, because not all energies necessarily feel great, And for me, it's given me a tool when I interact with other people who maybe there's been a little friction in the relationship or something. I can see something in the chart and I can just say it's energetic, right? This is not personal, because I think a lot of us also take human interactions so very personally. And I think very little is really personal. I think more often than not, we're kind of wrapped up in our individual processing. And, if you can see something to help explain why somebody might behave the way they behave, it brings some ease to the relationship at times. So very much so for if you're in a business group, business relationships with people that coworkers you have or anything, I think it's really important that way. And also the concept of you have a lot of creativity with this open head. You get a lot of inspiration, and again, I think those of us in this community are interested in being outside the box, accept that we're outside the box and we're trying to break that box wide open. And this just gives, again, another tool to say, this is why this happens.
Yeah. There is so much here that I could spend the entire rest of the time on, Michelle, but I just want to touch on a few things that you shared. The question that I ask is, why is human design potentially something good to tap into as a highly sensitive or neurodivergent business owner? And what I'm really hearing from you that I want to take a moment to pull that thread and hold up to whoever is listening is just the ability to start trusting yourself again and knowing that how you're created is beautiful, intentional, and that nothing has gone wrong here, right? And I think that is so important because we live in a world that is not designed for, neurocomplex people. And what that can do, and what I have found that it does, we very much likely go through a period where we are divorced from our self-trust, and we're divorced from our body, because if everyone is telling you, well, I have to be able to do this thing, and you can't, or it doesn't jive with you, or it severely burns you out, or whatever it is, then it's very easy to turn that back on ourselves and say, well, then there's something wrong with me, right? And being able to have the human design system and being able to see, like, there is actually nothing wrong with me. This is just how I'm created. And how can I learn to work with that, rather than thinking that I need to fit in some other mold that actually wasn't fashioned for me at all, I think can be so helpful. So I wanted to touch on that first of all, and also to say the other thread that you shared that I want to pull on is just recognizing that this isn't a system where the goal is even to get it all right, to live in complete harmony with your human design, to never step outside of it. And I'm saying that specifically because I know specifically with the clients that I work with, perfectionism tends to be such a thing, right? And this isn't yet another tool to hold yourself to this like perfectionistic standard and say, well, I'm failing if I'm not, living in complete harmony with my design. That the whole purpose is just simply to have more of that self-trust, understanding how you're made, and more of the awareness of like, almost I look at it as, well, if this doesn't feel good, well, why? And I can look at my chart and say, well, of course it doesn't feel good. And it gives me this validation that potentially sometimes we need to stop that self-blame. So it's not to go into more perfectionism. And I also wanted to share, as you were sharing about sort of being in someone's aura, what came to mind for me that I think could totally revolutionize receiving support. And if someone does this to me, I'm going to laugh and be totally open to this. But I have this one business coach that I have worked with that I do not know, like, and I've never thought about it from this angle before, but when I work with her, I have more ideas and downloads come to me than any other time. I'm talking, it's just like, boom, like something comes in just clear, clear, clear. And it's so funny because I have expressed that to her and she'll express back to me, like, it's so funny that you say that. I have a lot of people say that. So there's clearly something in her energy. When people are in her aura, that's just her gifting, right? That's just what comes through. And I love being it. Like, I know, like, okay, if I'm blocked in this way, I know that I can hire this person and have like immense downloads come in pretty clearly. But the thing that came through is you were talking about being in somebody's aura and it's not personal, it's just energetic, is like, how much would it revolutionize as a business owner, who you hire for support, if you say, okay, let me see your chart
Absolutely.
before you hire somebody, and knowing that this chart and my chart are going to meld in such a way that I get what I came for, and how much could that potentially eliminate, like, I invested in this and it was a dud of an investment and I didn't see the return on my investment,
Totally.
So that's really interesting. Yeah, like I said, I could, take a million things that you were saying and run with it in a million different directions. But those were some of the things that I heard that I feel like are really, really applicable for folks. And I know you already started touching on this a bit, and maybe I missed it because there was so much here. But I wanted to talk about like what specific things do you feel like are the most useful to look at in your chart for highly sensitive neurodivergent people? And I heard the Crown Center. Was there another one? Because I heard you say 2.
So today, to start off, I wanted to start with the 2 pressure centers that are the top and bottom of the chart. So there's the crown and then there's the root center on the bottom. And the root center is a motor. So it is both an awareness center and a motor center. It's our pressure center. It's the adrenaline. So for people who do not have a defined root, and again, remember the undefined center is white. So you're looking at a white square at the bottom of your chart. You are going to feel like you have a never-ending to-do list. There is just always too much to do, and you want to go through it quickly to get it off your plate, because then you feel like you're going to be able to rest and recover. And this is interesting. We can kind of speak to this because I am an undefined root and Kim is a defined root. And I can tell y'all that there are some crazy things that I find myself doing when I have to leave the house, specifically when I have to leave the house, maybe not for something that I want to be doing, but it's just something I have to be doing. I'll start deep cleaning stuff that I never clean. I mean, it's just like I'm going to be late because I'm deep cleaning the dishwasher, because everybody needs a deep cleaner dishwasher. So it's really interesting, and it's going through work really fast. I had a work situation this spring where I contracted with somebody who was a defined root, and we would co-work together because my pressure to want to get things done, we would like fly through the task. She would think I would need like 2 hours to do something, and we'd be through it in a half an hour. She's like, wow, I can't believe you went through that so fast. So I have to really work with my root a lot when I notice myself doing these odd things or feeling that pressure, and just telling myself, it's okay. It's going to get done. And if it doesn't get done, it's still okay. It's been one that I really notice a lot. And again, like you were talking about that awareness, I just have some curiosity. Like I said, I've learned to laugh at myself more as to what I'm doing and why I might be doing it. And then for those of you all with the defined root, you do have constant access to that adrenaline energy to go and do, but it still comes and pulses. So it pulses on and it pulses off. It's not just this consistent to go and do. And I feel for both of those, the defined and the undefined, society is set up on this 24/7 patriarchal society where they just think you should go and be and doing the same all the time. And energy just doesn't flow that way. And I think it's a real gift to look at the root system to try to give yourself the space and grace to start to break out of that mold, because that's a hard mold to break out of that I think a lot of us are stuck in or have been stuck in.
Yeah. Do you remember if Paul is an undefined root? Paul is my husband, by the way, folks.
I can look really quick.
Because I hear that a lot in him, the endless to-do list. So yeah, that would be curious to me. I had never heard the root system talked about in that way.
Mm-hmm. And then we were going to kind of chat through your chart a little bit. And so here's kind of the deeper way that I go. So what we've been talking about is what's considered your quantum graph, right? You have your personality and your body, your conscious and your unconscious mapped together. That is who you are. I've gotten really interested in taking those apart and sort of seeing what's going on with that, because the mind side is our conscious side. It's what we know. Now, those of us who, are in 30s, 40 plus, you've probably lived enough life experience that if you start diving deep into the system, you'll recognize yourself. And what people say is that the conscious side is what you know, it's who you think you are, and the design side is what other people see in you. So sometimes I am surprised at, what people will say, but I've lived enough life to be like, okay, I can see that. But it happens automatically, it's not processing through my mind. So I was looking at your mind side, personality, mind, personality. Sorry, there's so many words, guys. I know I'm confusing everyone. The black lines on the right side. And you are a totally open head and a totally open root. And so I think it'd be really interesting maybe for you to sort of, think about that and think back on that, because you do have an undefined crown and a defined root, but your definition comes through the body side. And I thought that was really fascinating to kind of look at. And then when I dig deeper into it, so, okay, you've got everything that's on your design body side, and your incarnation cross and your nodes. So the astrology goes from the highest expression down to the lowest as you look at the different planets. And the incarnation cross is the top four. It's your sun and earth on your design, on your personality and your design side. So you got 4 gates. And your design earth, sun and earth are in your root. So that's a lot of big energy for you, you know? And then your other gate in your head is your unconscious Mercury. So I thought that was interesting because we're talking about like inspiration and thoughts and everything. Mercury is the planet of communication. And so you come through with that question, why? Like I even heard it in how you reflected back what I had said to you. You came in with the why. Like that's just how natural people express everything, in my opinion, the way that I've used the system for so long. But that can also help people where if they've been listening to us talk and they're like, I'm a defined here, or I'm undefined here, but like I really don't understand that. It could just be on that unconscious side as well, you know? So it's a very dense system and there's multiple layers, but this is how I talk to Kim when we get together. I start explaining the different layers, which is honestly my favorite way to work with the system because information regurgitation is just overwhelming. So, you know, I kind of was trying to be really synthesizing simplicity because I'm extraordinarily detail oriented and I speak with a very detailed voice. So trying to be cognizant of like information overload is not the way to go with anybody in general, but especially with, you know, neurodivergent people that I might not be speaking the way that they understand, you know? So just understanding that the pressure centers, if they are white guys, then you're amplifying other people's energy. And it's really easy to become what we call conditioned in those systems where you're living in your not self because you're so used to being around other people with that energy. You know, we do pretty much stay in aura with somebody. You know, we live in families, we work in groups. It's not too often that, you know, people have large portions of their day that they're by themselves. But that is one thing you can do. If you do see that those areas are open, making sure that you take some time to just do an energetic dump and cleanse where you can get out of aura and you can kind of just let things settle. That's where you want to work through some of the body techniques, you know, so that you know that you're centered in your own body. And then you can start to really trust, okay, this energy is mine. And this is what I'm experiencing. And this is what I want to express, you know, kind of it empowers you. I personally believe.
Yeah. Well, what types of things do you think someone may notice when they're not aligned in their human design, in their business or in their life?
So there can be a lot of feeling that you are shoulding or pushing. Obviously, there is. I'd love for everything to be in ease and flow and drop in. We're not quite there yet in this world, but it should feel more easeful than it should feel challenging. And looking back and reflecting back on when you've felt that ease will really help you identify the environment and the situations that, you know, work best for you. Also, I really like this system because there are going to be some people who are in situations that they can't get out of, you know? And knowing that it's an energetic pressure, I find is very useful. Again, you might be able to manage your day a little bit better. Say, hey, I can only really be around this person for an hour or 90 minutes before I need to take a break, or I notice things are going to go really, really badly. I have a family member who has a defined crown, and I have to do that because it just is too much. It makes me become the version of myself I don't want to be when I'm around them. And I've found if I can just take that little short break at times, it really helps that relationship. And that's honestly, my contract in the spring was really fun because we were not contracting on human design, but we were both very big into human design. And so we were able to utilize that as a tool for the foundation of our relationship. And there were just times where we would joke with each other. She was much more defined than I was. And I would say, I can't handle your defined ego anymore. I can't handle your defined root anymore. I need a break. And I have other centers defined that were pressure on her. And she would say the same thing. So it was nice to be able to use that instead of being like, oh, you're coming in so strong and you want so much done. And I just can't do that. Okay, those are both very true statements, and there's nothing wrong with either one of them. And we had a beautiful tool to diffuse any sort of escalation because we would just take a time out and we would just reset. And it was very, very helpful for the business relationship to be able to utilize that, for us to be able to move forward and not get stuck in, the non-self and all that can
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of shooting, lots of pressure, pushing, forcing when you're not in line. And what do you typically see if somebody is in line? Like, what are some things that people may notice or feel?
Just that ease, just that that graceful flow where it just, I know we all have had those days where we just feel like this is the best day ever. Everything is going my way and it's great, it just doesn't feel like you're fighting. And I will say, human design brings you to a life you didn't expect to have. It's not going to take you in this logical ABC direction. And if you can really embrace that, you open up the beauty of the unexpected and having situations be even better than you expected them to be, So really pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's important. First of all, I just want to say it's so interesting to me because I am aware of my human design, and it's something that on a much higher level than what Michelle is explaining, because I don't have the depth of knowledge about the system that she does. But it's something that I keep in mind when I'm creating my offerings, when I'm running my business. It informs the way that I run my business. Things of that nature. I try to work with it as much as I can to the knowledge that I have. And I'm hearing you share so many things where I'm like, yeah, this is totally yes. And I work with it in a different way. And so I think that is something so validating of there can be different ways to support and go about supporting different elements of just being human and being you, right?
Absolutely.
And I think if we can have the tools of human design in addition to maybe some somatic tools like what I use, nervous system tools, things of that nature, the more support you have, the more awareness you have, the better, right? So I just think it's something cool to observe as I hear you talking. I'm like, yes, I do that in a little bit of a different way. And it's beautiful to know that there are other ways to support the same things. And that I also wanted to bring forward, as far as the shooting, the forcing when you're out of alignment, and then the flow when you are in alignment. I would just love to have you speak to this because I think this is something that I encounter with clients a lot. And that is thinking that ease or flow equals that there won't be any discomfort and that it won't be hard, right? And I feel like I just want to make sure and make that distinction because I think we're probably in agreement that that's not what ease and flow means.
Yeah.
But I would love to have you speak to that for a moment before we move on.
Yeah, no. And I mean, again, that's why I default to the chart, because as you are navigating towards whatever goal you're working towards and you encounter some resistance, that's when I like to use the chart to be like, is this me? Is this a low expression that I'm struggling to work to become a higher, more aligned expression through? Or maybe I am doing something wrong and I need to pivot a little bit, not throw the baby out with the bathwater type thing, but just make a little bit of a change to sidestep it and think it differently. I guess I see it a little bit from still it still feels tough in this world to really get outside that box, you know, because there's not a lot of support for it. So you have to, a lot of times, be your own support system when you want to do something so radically different. And that can be really hard. And, you know, within the chart, that's also where I see easier access to the right somatic tools, you know, because nervous system regulation, somatic work that's getting out there now, which is great. I definitely think that's needed. But I am a big believer in specificity. You know, there's not one thing that works for everyone, but one thing will work for you. And I think the more we have an ability to ease into what might work for you right away is just better for everybody, right? So it's like when you encounter that resistance, you can kind of mentally, because people come to human design questioning who they are, and it's a very mental stimulation thing. I mean, just look at the chart. It's overwhelming. Like, if you want to go down that path, you really like your brain to think. But it is ultimately a tool to bring awareness into the body. And so you'll find, like, guys, my conscious sun gate is called the gate of friction. My unconscious earth is called the gate of crisis. And I have that gate of crisis 3 times in my chart. And it's about emotional crisis. And I can tell you story after story after story that it is something big that's happening that brings people to me to interact with me to neutralize that emotion. And that's took a while to get comfortable with that. And for a long time, I internalized that as something was wrong with me. So finding out that that's the type of energy that I have, and that's something that I have to be able to learn. I had to and continue to have to learn to deal with that discomfort and being more and more comfortable with the discomfort, because it's a gift of mine, as strange as that sounds. And there's a lot of gates that you find in human design that have names that you just kind of scratch your head and you're like, I'm not sure I want that one. Can I pass on that one?
Well, is it Zayden has the crisis, the gate of crisis? Yeah. My son has the gate of crisis, and you told me that, and I was like, let me give it back, because the whole first year it was just crisis after crisis after crisis. I'm like, no, give it back, please.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've seen a lot play out with Zayden for sure.
We've seen that in action. Absolutely. Well, I know that we talked a bit about this, but I'm curious if you would have anything to add of just taking my chart as an example, because I know some people are weird about sharing their charts and what they have going on in their chart, but I have no issues with it. And if there's anything else you want to add as far as my own journey of aligning my business to my human design and how it's functioning now as it's more aligned, and maybe just using it as an example of a jumping off point so people can sort of take it and paste it to their own of, this is how this may look, to look at your chart and figure out how to make a business that sort of fits.
Yeah. So the one thing I was looking at, because I was trying to stay within like the crown and the root, because I don't want to be overwhelming to people. And guys, I've blown past the foundation of the energy types. I mean, that is actually the foundation of what you would go to when you're looking at trying to set up a business. What is your energy type? So maybe that might be part 2. Circling back to part 2. Yeah. But I was looking at your chart specifically, and you have the channel of concentration defined. So your sacral center and your root center are connected through the channel of concentration, which sounds beautiful and it sounds wonderful. It's like, yes, I can concentrate, but it's what you want to focus on. And so I've watched you navigate through some different themes throughout your business and pivot as you've realized, like, okay, I've outgrown this, I'm growing into this, because you've realized I don't have the capacity to serve there anymore. I don't want to focus there. It doesn't feel good to be stuck there. Sure, you have the tools and the skills, and you could probably do it in your sleep, but it doesn't light you up. And for you, from that root to the sacral, like, it needs to light you up for what you do. So I've really seen that with you, and even the way that you can bring together your sanctuary membership. You've created this podcast. Like, it's really neat as a friend to just watch you navigate and be like, there she goes. she's got the adrenaline, she's got the concentration, and she's locked in there. So I really like watching that with you.
Yeah. Yeah. As you're sharing that, I think what's coming up in me is how hard it is for me to concentrate on things that I don't have that feeling about. So specifically, marketing is typically really tough for me. I have a lot of feelings around marketing, and I will notice myself, like distracting myself on my phone or scrolling, or, oh, I got to go get something to eat or whatever when I sit down to do marketing materials. If it's something that interests me, I can hyper focus in 2 seconds. I can be really dialed in. I'm creating a course right now, and hours can pass as I'm creating the Canva slides because it's materials that I'm interested in. And so yeah, that's sort of what came up for me as you were sharing that.
Definitely. So there's a few things around that. So because, especially those of us with small businesses, we have to wear multiple hats within a business that we probably don't want to be wearing. The concept of doing something that brings you joy before you have to do that marketing will help move through that task. And then also giving yourself an allotted time. I would say time over task, because if it's tough to focus, don't try and make yourself focus for an hour. If you give yourself a half an hour, you might get one really good thing accomplished. And then, as you grow and develop and everything, those are the type of things that you can look to outsource, as you grow a business. And when I say grow a business, I don't even mean like you're getting big, huge, just getting to the point where you can have support resources for whatever your business is, because I do think the more we can say we're our zone of genius is, because there are people who love to market, and then it becomes the collaboration, and we're supporting other people, and we're staying within our zone of geniuses. And then that's where a lot of ease and flow happens. So, I have a huge vision that we will move into more of an economy like that, where we can really enjoy what we're doing and have the gifts that we're meant to give to people, without feeling like there's a lot of pressure or force with some of the way that business is set up right now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, I would love to move into rapid fire questions here at the end. I just like to ask these few last questions as a means just for fun and for the audience to get to know you more and things of that nature. No questions that you have to think really deeply about. You can sort of just share whatever first comes to your mind, and they don't need to be long responses. But the first thing is there anything that you'd like to say in closing that feels like it needs another moment to wrap up from our podcast today?
No, just thank you for having me on. Thank you for watching if you've watched this. And, again, just reinforcing, like, your design is beautiful as it is. You are the expert in your energy. And just take my strength in that statement if you can't trust it right now, because you are. And I hope you can feel that.
Yeah. What do you wish people knew about your experience as a highly sensitive person in the world?
That I feel like highly sensitive people, you can't see it, right? It's that invisible inside. We go around and we look normal on the outside, and you can have no idea what's going on the inside, which can be challenging at times until you learn to use your voice to advocate for yourself.
What is the last thing that truly surprised you?
Oh gosh. Probably my dog's passing a couple months ago. She was a senior dog. It was time. But the way that it happened and the speed at which it happened was shockingly surprising.
Yeah. What consistently brings you deep joy?
Being out in nature.
Yes.
Our May mountain walks.
Yes. We have weekly nature walks together, which is beautiful. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your gifts with us today. thank you so much for diving more deeply into this complex system. I have no doubt we will likely have questions and need to go in, deeper to some different areas as well. But I so appreciate you starting to skim the surface and unpack this. And I know it will be so beneficial for so many people. So thank you.
Thank you.